Welcome to Conversations with Chuck Hester, a weekly podcast designed to inform and entertain you and introduce you to some really interesting and inspiring people. And I'm your host, Chuck Hester. Today's guest is Michael Schultz, and Michael is one of those interesting and inspiring people I got a chance to get to know a while back. So I want to introduce you now. Michael founded Infuse Hospitality in 2016, which creates and operates first-in-class food and beverage experiences ranging from mobile cart solutions, cafes top full service, fine dining, and everything in between. From traditional retail, campus solutions, building amenities, hotels, lifestyle centers, and more, Infuse Hospitality services 25 million square feet in 25 states and Canada. And this is where you had me at hello. Infuse Hospitality is especially proud of its feature concept, Fairgrounds Craft Coffee and Tea, a first-of-a-kind cafe offering a variety of craft coffee roasters, specialty teas, and a fresh chef-made breakfast and lunch menu under one roof. 8 locations across the nation, many more in the works. Fairgrounds is redefining the coffee experience with more options than ever. Welcome, Michael Schultz.
Thank you, and thanks for having me. It's a great pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. Well, you and I have had conversations before, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that Bob Seeger introduced us, which was excellent. And so I want to start as we mentioned. And by the way, they had you at hello was the Jerry Maguire thing that we talked about of coffee, fresh food. You name it, I'm there, man. I mean, especially the craft roasters. So all good stuff. But Michael, you mentioned that in your LinkedIn bio, you're a restaurant worker turned serial entrepreneur, investor, and founder with over 30 years of experience in the industry. Let's unpack that a little bit. So talk to me about how you got started and how you got to where you are today.
This may be a 6-hour podcast. Honestly, I started working in restaurants at the age of 12, washing dishes, and needed to help, contribute to my family, and kind of worked my way through from there, and really fell in love with the industry, and had a goal at that time to become an executive in the restaurant business. And so really dedicated my life, and it's a tough industry, worked crazy hours, 80, 90 hours a week, and really missed so many things because I wanted to show I was truly a dedicated person. And, that's how I advanced. I wasn't the smartest person, but I would do anything and work extremely hard. And, I achieved the goal of becoming an executive of a restaurant company. That's really what I wanted. And then my wife, Sari, became pregnant with my first of 4 children, my daughter, Sadie. And when I found out that she was pregnant, there was a change. And I describe it as like somebody swapped out my eyes. And I was very business oriented and producing results. And all of a sudden I looked out and said, oh my God, that's somebody's daughter, or that's somebody's son, and that's somebody's mom. And it really got me thinking. And my dad was a clergyman. And when my dad passed away, I had thousands of people reaching out saying, your dad named me, did this, married me, helped me when my parents were sick, named my child, like all of these beautiful memories. And I started thinking, like, what kind of legacy am I going to leave this child? Like, people are going to turn and say, oh, your dad was great. He got the stock price from $6 to $42. It was totally meaningless. And so I was kind of disappointed in myself. And it went on for a period of time. And then I figured out that to do what I really wanted to do, I would need to have my own company, because even running someone else's company, you can't always drive the culture and say, well, this is more important than that. And so, my wife was thrilled, as I showed up at one of her last ultrasounds, and she said, what are you doing here? I thought you had to work, because I always had to work. And I said, I've got great news. I'm going to start my own company, and I'm going to quit my job. And my wife, who's the nicest person ever, and maybe 5 feet in heels, stood up and pointed at me and said, I'm about to give birth and we just bought a house, and get your tushy back to work right now. And I really went on for a long period of time saying that I wanted to leave a legacy for my children where people would have stories to share with them, to tell about how their dad, one day when I'm gone, and I'm in no rush, I plan I'll be 115 years old, but how I helped them, or how our businesses helped communities, and that there were stories to share. And so I started my life as an entrepreneur because I wanted to control my own destiny, and I was afraid of looking back on my last breath and wondering what if. And so now I'm literally, obsessed with that legacy, and that's the focus. Our organizations exist to provide people opportunity to make a better life for themselves and their families. And that if we're successful, that through our philanthropic efforts, we should be able to make the communities in which we operate better because of it. And so, as you mentioned, I own numerous organizations. Today we're talking about Infuse Hospitality, which is a phenomenal story in and of itself. But that's kind of how I got started on my adventure into being a serial entrepreneur.
Well, you kind of teed up the next question. Then, Infuse Hospitality is a story in and of itself. So let's talk about the Infuse. First of all, how did you start it? Where did you come up with the concepts, and where are you going with it today?
Yeah, so I mean, as you mentioned, and I think back in under 4 years, servicing 25 million square feet and now 27 states and part of Canada, it's crazy. So one of our other businesses was a coffee and tea distribution company, and my partner reached out and said, hey, can we open up a cafe at Yelp's corporate headquarters in San Francisco, Chicago, and New York? And I hung up the phone on him. I thought it was a joke. And he called me back and he said, I'm serious. And I said, I'm not opening up a cafe at Yelp's offices. And he said, well, they buy millions of dollars of coffee from us a year. I said, I'm going to open a cafe at Yelp. And it was really to satisfy our wholesale clients. And then the next day we got a call from the Board of Options Exchange. Hey, can you open a cafe? I said, what's going on here? And really took a deep dive in and spoke to some friends at Gensler and spoke to some friends at CBRE. And I said, do you know why these people are calling me? And they said, yes, it's the same reason they're calling us, to tear out all of the marble and put in reclaimed wood. And I was kind of like, what does that mean? And I did a deep dive for a month. And what I found is that the world of commercial real estate, the world of hotels, the world of shopping centers, and the world of business in general, they were all saying the same exact thing. How do we acquire and retain millennial talent to work at our business? How do we get tenants in the building? How do we get this next generation to come to our hotels? And the more I looked into it, I saw that the only solutions that were out there were large institutional food service groups that are antiquated and make money 17 different ways and didn't have these authentic bespoke solutions. Or you had large organizations dealing with these folks that want to do the sales of my children's lemonade stand, and that it was a total waste of time and a big thorn in the side and challenge to always find these solutions around food and beverage. And so we created Infuse Hospitality as a solution for all of that, where anywhere in the world, we can serve as their in-house food and beverage team. And we're literally only limited by the scope of the imagination, whether it's a steakhouse, a fine dining restaurant, a coffee shop, mobile solutions, campus solutions, hotel solutions, traditional retail. We have the ability to create something, whether you're 8 or 80, and to do it at scale where it still feels local, authentic, and is an exceptional food and beverage experience. And so grew from there so very quickly, and proved out the model for some of our clients, and they deployed us throughout their portfolios. And it's grown at such an incredible pace that I have no idea sometimes when I kind of float above it and look back how we even did that. And the most important part of it is that we did that while it's still was the same solution of how I envisioned all of my companies as driving a culture that really values people and fulfills my obsession with this legacy for my children and doing good through the way that we treat people and the way in which we think and in which we do business. So that's the short version of Infuse Hospitality.
Well, and admirable in so many different ways, Michael. And we'll get specific into one of my favorite subject, paying it forward. But I would imagine that you have long-term employees who are really enjoying the work, and it sounds like you're embracing what everybody. We talked about this when we went through COVID, for instance, that we got to make sure that everybody knows we're safe and we're doing X, Y, and Z. But then it became more of a message that was just a hollow message, if you will. But you guys are living it. I mean, you're living, good quality life for employees and embracing employees as family. That seems to be a big aspect of who you are. So bravo for that, for sure. But you're an entrepreneur and you've been doing this a long time and 30 years in the restaurant industry. And so during that time of the ramp up, and here's what it looks like. Give me a couple of examples. One of one of your best successes. I'm assuming that a call from Yelp that says, "Hey, we want you to come in," would be one. But what have you learned from things that you tried that didn't work?
I think the greatest lesson that I learned, Chuck, was how to say no, and that we're lucky we're at a point where I only do business with people I want to do business with. Life's short, and our most valuable resource is our time. None of us know how much of it we have, and when you spend it, it's gone. And so the most important lesson I learned was from one of my partners turning to me and saying, "When are you going to learn to say no? Are you going to do every deal that there possibly is?" And so I think that was a critical lesson. And, one of the things that you mentioned, our long-term employees and this and that and the other, like the reality is I'm the least important person in the organization by far. I'm their cheerleader. And I'm there to support all of them. But when people join our company, it's not this like anointment and you're in, and it's like fraternity pledgeship, and you're honored to become part of it. Like I deeply feel a responsibility to everybody who joins our organization in helping them fulfill their dreams, in investing in them, in teaching them how to create balance in their life. And it's scary, like my children aren't more important than their children. And between the different organizations, you're talking about thousands and thousands of people. And so, when I go to bed at night, it honestly, Chuck, it scares the hell out of me that I have a responsibility to all of them. And that's why I jump out of bed at 4 a.m. running to do my work, because it's fun that I have an opportunity that I can have a positive impact on these people. And so, paying it forward, I have a very different view on how organizations work and who's most important and the way things should function. And when somebody joins an organization, they don't owe me anything. I owe them a lot. They're willing to believe in me and believe in the mission and my philosophies, and I'm now responsible to them. And so I think it's that culture that has allowed us to attract insanely talented people. And the reason why we've had great success over these last few years is, if I've done anything, I guess I'm good at figuring out what people will create balance and putting together good business partners. But, our success is the dishwashers and the people talking to our guests and the folks dealing with our clients, and more to do with them and much less to do with me.
Yeah, and like I said, Michael, very admirable as far as what you go. Now, do you do, like a better way to put it, do you ever do undercover boss type stuff where you're going to your different areas and checking out, see how things are going? Or, I would assume as a 30-year plus veteran that most of the back end and everything else and everything that needs to be done. But is that something that you're involved with where you're just, checking on operations, or how does that work for you?
I'm embarrassed to say, you know, like we've got so many things that there's folks that I haven't met and places that I haven't been to. So there are situations where I walk in and no one knows who I am, but I don't, you know, I like watching Undercover Boss. I don't believe in that philosophy. I think that if you have an organization, look, the greatest things that I've learned in my career are through my mistakes. And, you know, some of those mistakes I got fired. And I think that I have the opportunity to do things differently now. I have an organization where it's okay to make a mistake. That's part of our investment. You know, I never didn't invest in something or didn't buy a stock and then complain about the return on my investment. And I look at people the same way. And I don't know why every company doesn't do this. Once you hire somebody and you bring them in, it's not, oh, great, you've done these things before, you know how to do this. It's the beginning. And then you have to invest your time into them. And so I don't need to sneak up and do Undercover Boss because nobody behaves or does anything differently when I'm coming, because they know that when I come, you know, it's not unusual for someone to go grab the manager and say, I think Michael Schultz is here. He's been in the dish pit washing dishes the last 40 minutes. Like, when I go visit somewhere, it's to work and to help them and listen to their dreams and hear how I can be of assistance to them. And I think because of that culture where they know that, you know, the executive leadership team is a support team, they're there to support them and make them successful, and that the folks in the boardroom are not the most important people in the organization. And so because of that, I don't feel like we need to do Undercover Boss. I think that you can be open and honest and get everybody to understand that everything that they're doing is impacting thousands of people across the country that they're never going to meet and their families, and have an understanding. And if you hire great people who care about others and you invest in them and give them the tools that they need to be successful, and you're there supporting them, that you don't need to do an Undercover Boss. You can have a pulse on what's going on without having to do that tactic. And luckily, all of my family and friends feel the need to give me a full-on report every time they go somewhere, which is unnecessary, but I appreciate it. But I believe in my people, and they understand that they're more in control of my destiny. I'm sorry, in my legacy and what's going to be left for my children than I am. And they also know that, you know, the money part of it, the fiscal responsibility, is so that we can use all of that to create more jobs and give them more opportunities. And so we're all going to win together or not. We don't need the layers and the checks, and we have systems and processes and checks and balances, but we're very open and honest. It's not part of our culture to do an Undercover Boss or to have to sneak up on anybody, or for a VP or an EVP or a director to give a call and say, oh, Michael's coming, you got to clean up the place. Don't clean it up because of me, clean it up because you have guests coming, and and so it's kind of a fun idea to do Undercover Boss, but I really don't believe in that kind of methodology.
Yeah. Well, and like you said, you are the type of entrepreneur owner that, people want to work for. You're the type of person that says, you're not an asset, you're a family member, you're the person that I want to make sure, and what you said earlier, I've heard from multiple entrepreneurs, CEOs, agency owners that, they, as soon as they started hiring employees, it was like, oh my gosh, now I'm responsible for other people. And that was, a thing that they were most concerned about, to make sure that they were taken care of, which quite frankly, especially bigger businesses, that's sometimes unusual to be able to have that environment and start it from the people up as opposed to the financial down, if you will, as to what goes on with that. So fascinating to see that you're able to do that and make that work. And again, I will kudos you all day long, Michael, in our conversations, because every time you bring something up, like, okay, yeah, that's it. That's one of the things that's most important. Greatly appreciate that. Let's look at a little bit of what Infuse is doing in regards to some of the newer concepts, because that was one of the ones that I looked at. Fairgrounds Craft Coffee and Tea. When was that? When was that born? And how is that progressing? And tell me more about that concept, because I love the concept.
Fairgrounds to me. Fairgrounds was created because we would go to meetings and we'd break for coffee, and two people would go to Starbucks and one would go to La Colombe and one would go to God knows where. We couldn't go to the same place. And we go to dinner and there'd be 100, different taps and you could choose beers from everywhere. And I didn't understand why there was no consumer choice in coffee. And then there were other parts of coffee that really bothered me, right? Like, I thought it was very masculine. I thought it was aloof and unapproachable. And I never understood why you couldn't get, if you go to Europe, if you go to different parts of the Middle East, like you say you want to go to a restaurant, you want to go to a cafe. Both places, same, great food, great beverages, and one's a 3-hour experience, one's, a 30-minute experience. And so Fairgrounds was the solution for all the things that I was missing. And, craft coffee and tea, specialty coffee, people talk about growing the craft. And, I have holdings in different areas, from coffee farm to manufacturing to retail to whatever. And I'd go into these specialty coffee shops, one, on Abercrombie in Venice Beach, and I won't say what, but they'd look at me and say, basically, what do you want, old man? Because I didn't have the twisty mustache and beard, and I never understood why there was no hospitality. And then I'm supposed to come back and bring my friends and give you money. It was crazy. And I think about Starbucks, and I've got 4 young children. I never woke up in the morning saying, oh, I can't, wait to bring them, to feed them, a bunch of frozen garbage with additives and preservatives. So we created Fairgrounds Craft Coffee and Tea, which is a first of kind of experience where a couple of things, you can pick from different coffee roasters throughout the country in the same place. So, maybe 12 or 15 different roasters. You could do a flight of different hot coffees. You could do flights of cold brew, sparkling botanicals, kombucha, all kinds of different things on tap. Healthy, better for you elixirs, which are these awesome, crazy, color-changing, fun things that are healthy and better for you. And an awesome chef-crafted menu in a space that's designed to be super comfortable. And it was really a solution for many things. And then I had a lot of fun with it. Fairgrounds is very personal to me. My children's names are on the menu. My grandfather, my grandpa Irv, his name is on the menu. The color of the logo was his 56 Thunderbird. The swings that we have at the brew bar while you watch your drink being made was a swing that he hung up for me that from a cotton tree that I saw, one weekend visiting him when I was 5. And so it's extremely personal. It's a lot of fun. We've had great success. Fairgrounds is throughout Illinois and Wisconsin and Minnesota and Dallas, Texas. And we've got, I believe, 9 locations with another 9 that should be opening in the next 12 months or so. And it's just a great place. Like whether you're 8 or 80, there's something there for you at Fairgrounds. And we have a lot of fun with it. It's very personal and very special to me.
So if somebody wanted to go to a Fairgrounds, where's the best place to find that information? Because I want to go. I'll make a trip to Dallas from Houston right now.
Go right now, Chuck. Don't wait. You should run.
Yeah, well, that and build one in Raleigh, North Carolina, where I'm headed this summer. So,
careful what you ask for, because that may just happen. You can check us out at www.fairgrounds.cafe, and tons of articles, tons of beautiful images. It's extremely Instagrammable. The creative pictures and things that folks, our guests, have created on TikTok and on Instagram is just, it's so incredible. And, before we open the first one, fun story, Chuck, or two quick stories. A lot of people ask where you got the name. And so technically, the name, I was reading to one of my daughters, Charlotte's Web, and they talked about the Fairgrounds. And I said, oh, how interesting. And when you think about the Fairgrounds, my wife is from Minnesota. Her memory of the Minnesota State Fair is all this food and, these other things. And some people's memory of the fairgrounds is, and it's very much like the idea of fairgrounds where we have all this variety and choice and celebrate diversity. Your memory of the fairgrounds sometimes is the first time your parents gave you that roll of tickets and you could chart your own adventure. You're going to go on that ride or play that game. And so too at our fairgrounds, where there's always something new to discover. And for me, the memory of the fairgrounds was going to Grateful Dead shows or Fish shows or different musical experiences. And so the name, really came from that. And an interesting story, before we opened the first fairgrounds, my grandpa Irv, who was my hero, had passed away. And I went to my grandma Flossie and I said, I'd really like to have Grandpa's name on the menu. I want to do this drink called Grandpa Irv's Old Fashioned, an espresso old fashioned. And, we're going to grow this around the country. And I want to hear people yelling out, Grandpa Irv's Old Fashioned. And my grandma said, well, he'd hate that, but I'll allow it. And the night before we opened the first fairgrounds, we did a big VIP party, and I got a call at like 9:40 at night that my grandma had passed away. And so as I do travel around the country, when I hear his name called out, Grandpa Irv has now been in Forbes and Cosmopolitan and all these other publications. So to be able to call my mom and my aunts and everybody and say, hey, Grandpa was in Cosmo today, I now feel like he would be okay with it. So we have a lot of fun with fairgrounds, and I'm very, very proud of it.
Yeah, and well, you should be. I'll wish for that for come to Raleigh. That would be just fine as far as I'm concerned, Michael. That would be great. We'll touch on this briefly, and like I said in the pre-show, it's something that I'm not talking about as much because we're kind of moving into a different direction now with what I call the new reality, not the new normal. But obviously COVID was, a mitigating factor for you and hospitality in general, but in particular for your businesses, how did it affect you and how did you pivot or, deal with that?
COVID was interesting. COVID has actually worked out okay for us. Last March, I was in Newport Beach and Laguna Beach, and, I had heard rumblings about what was going on, but I really wasn't paying attention. And in the middle of a meeting, I looked up on the screen and it said Disneyland closing. It's Disneyland closing. And got on a plane, went back to Chicago. That Monday, I was supposed to be in New York for a meeting with some of the folks from Hamilton in some discussions. And my wife said, please don't get on a plane and fly. And I said, no, it's perfectly fine. And by Sunday morning, we were in like DEFCON mode, having emergency meetings literally 3 times a day to figure out what was going on. And it was extremely scary and difficult. And, those next couple of weeks, it was emergency meetings. It was, and there were different laws and different rules in every state and different municipalities. And you can imagine, super complicated thing. But it hit me very hard, Chuck, especially with the mission of what was going on. And it became apparent that we were going to have to furlough people. And that was devastating. And, I was up all night long and I was sitting in my library and just nauseous and, tears. I was failing my people. And I said, I'm going to do whatever. I'm not furloughing people. I'm not doing anything. And I'll do whatever to keep this going. And at that time, I didn't know, was this a 3-week thing? Was it a 3-month thing? I really didn't know. And then it became blatantly apparent that I could try to do that. And I don't care if you've got $3 trillion on your books or $300,000. When you're dealing with something that you don't know what's going on or the length of it, you can run through all of that. And so that it became very clear to me that worse than furloughing people is, what if there's no company that exists on the back end of this for these people to come back to, and no jobs? And so it was a very difficult thing. And, I remember at the beginning of COVID looking for the silver lining. And I really think that it's not important to figure out, why is this happening? Why is this happening? What's important is, what's the lesson that we're supposed to learn? And all of a sudden, Chuck, I saw neighbors who hadn't ever spoken with each other walking down the street after dinner, saying hi, waving, people slowing down, families eating dinner together. And my hope was that whatever the timeline of this, that people would learn the lesson that it's important that we slow down. It's important that we understand that, companies should exist to give people the opportunity to make a better life for themselves, not give up your life to serve a company. And my hope that coming out of it was that people were going to be a little bit kinder and a little bit slower. We took action to protect the organizations throughout COVID. And because of that action, we've come out even stronger. It's accelerated our philosophies of why our business made sense anyways. And we're busier than ever. And so we're able to hire, we're able to continue the mission. And, we really, it was the ultimate test. And I really feel like as a leader, it's kind of easy when things are going well. People show their true colors at a time like this. And so I'm extremely proud of our people in our organization, the way in which we behave. And that's what's important to me.
Yeah. And I'll echo that, because regular viewers and listeners of this podcast know I use a phrase called COVID blessings. And you mentioned those basically. I'm in an apartment complex and didn't know my neighbors very well and started sharing meals with them. Or, folks have messaged me on Facebook and, I understand that you can help in a local area, buying them groceries, doing whatever it makes sense, slowing down to the point where we're also getting more work done, quite frankly, because we're, Zoom meetings as opposed to commuting, those type of things. And then the other part of that is, and I'm sure you've seen this as well, is what I call the passion pivot, where folks are realizing, hey, you know what, I need to be passionate about what I'm doing. And COVID and locking down gave them the opportunity to explore more of that. I've seen some more new entrepreneurs come out this last year than I have in 5. So some really cool things going on with that. Well, and again, kudos to you on all of that and being able to work it through. I've done work in marketing with restaurants and card leaders, and it was not a fun year, but the ones that were strong and understood how to treat their customers, their employees, are coming out even better now. So it's a really cool thing to see. Michael, you mentioned in passing about social media, and of course, one of my favorite subjects, is LinkedIn, and you mentioned TikTok and Instagram and the like. So tell me your favorite channels. How are you using them, and which ones don't you like? Which are you not comfortable with?
I think social media is a blessing and a curse. I really like LinkedIn. My team is really trying to teach me how to use Instagram and all these other things. It's a little confusing to me. I think it's great, but I also think that it could be a curse as well. One of the things at Fairgrounds, a fun story that relates to social media is when we opened the first location, I asked the general manager to order 5 red Etch-a-Sketches. And she said, "What's an Etch-a-Sketch?" I said, "Please just go on Amazon and order an Etch-a-Sketch." And I went to the orientation and I said, "Hello, my name is Michael. And these Etch-a-Sketches, I want to tell you a story. When I go out with my children and we go out to eat, or in our restaurants, I see families sitting there and mom and dad are on their iPhone and the kids have iPads in front of them and they're on social media or they're watching movies. And I think that it is really devastating to society. And so when you see that, or when they come in general, I want you to walk over and hand them this Etch-a-Sketch. And inevitably, the parents laugh and go, oh my God, I haven't seen one of these in 20 years. And the kids are looking for the power button. And in every situation, 5 minutes later, the electronics are away, their arms are around their children, and they're drawing on the Etch-a-Sketch. I think that social media is good and bad. I really am concerned about people's mental health and well-being. And, for the most part, a lot of the things that you see on social media is rainbows and unicorns. And I think that it makes, while it makes the world smaller and it connects all of us, it also makes people a little bit lonelier and further apart. And so I think people are a little surprised that, they reach out to me or this and that and the other, and I want to get on a phone call. I love interacting with you. I want to talk to them. I want to see them. And so I think technology and social media has been a blessing and a curse. I love LinkedIn. I love the ability it gives people to reach out to others. I love social media in that it gives people the opportunity or a vehicle for their creativeness. And there's just many, many great parts to it, but I have concerns as well. I happen to like LinkedIn. I think it's a wonderful foundation for people to use and connect. And so that's usually my go-to.
Oh, good. Yeah. I obviously because I work it, I teach it, I coach it, but yeah, LinkedIn has always been for the last 16, 17 years now, something. And I'm in that boat with you of Instagram. Somebody brought up, and I work for an agency, they brought up something about using TikTok or Clubhouse. And, I had my camera on at the time and I cringed and I shouldn't have the camera on. But, I look to, and we've talked about this on the podcast as well, I look to what I call conversational mentoring, meaning, working with millennials or Zs and learning from them. And it sounds like you're doing the same thing with your staff of being able to do that. Michael, we talked about this. We could make it a 3-hour podcast, but, this guy goes by so fast. And the other thing I wanted to mention before we close, for those of you who have not had a chance to connect with Michael Schultz, do. Best way to do that is, look at my stream or his stream on LinkedIn and connect. He shares a trait that I so admire amongst folks that I really want to be like. And that is that, as a CEO of a very large corporation with a lot of employees, or, a well-known influencer, Craig Newmark comes to mind, he is accessible. And that's the most important aspect of it, because, what he's getting across here, guys, is he is talking about a fundamental need to treat people like people and not assets, and being able to pay it forward in the process of doing that. So, Michael, I greatly appreciate the time that you've taken today. I know we'll be back in touch on a lot of different things. As a matter of fact, I'm going to talk about one thing in particular next, which is one of my favorite passion projects. But thanks for the time, and God bless, man. I mean, I'll find a way to get to one of the cafes. I will get to a Fairgrounds, if one way or the other, become a road trip for me to be able to do that. So again, thank you, Michael. I appreciate your time, and we'll continue the conversation, as I hope we always will.
Looking forward very much.
All right. Thank you. All right. So as usual, like I said, it just goes by so quick. But this is another weekly podcast episode of Conversations. Now, the one thing I do want to talk about, as I mentioned earlier, is on to the Pay It Forward Minute, and we'll talk about my Pay It Forward Tuesdays initiative. Always shouting out the Pay It Forward 6, which is Adam Sinkus, Jennifer Radke, Bob Shears, Brian Basilico, and those folks that are working on there as well. And Bridget is among those. We will soon be selecting our next recipients in April. As a matter of fact, the deadline is this week. So if you know somebody who you'd like to have as a nominee, basically what we do is we come alongside a entrepreneur or 501c3, and we provide 3 hours total of 30-minute each consultations, if you will, and consulting work with those folks to help them in website development and sales and marketing, LinkedIn, something that is very valuable to them. And as we'd like to mention, we started this in December, but by the time we're done in 2021, we will have come alongside 16 different organizations. So go to payitforwardtuesdays.com. or .org to be able to get more information on that as well. And also, if you're a company or organization that provides products and services to small businesses, then we are looking for sponsors to provide those services in kind to our 2021 recipients, and also to support our organization because, probably something that we haven't talked about, we are working towards 501c3 status ourselves. And it's a great way to build brand equity in your community by paying it forward, as Michael has mentioned as well. So next week, and this becomes the food executive month, I guess, but on April 21st, my guest is Stephanie Stuckey, and she's CEO and granddaughter of the founder of Stuckey's Corporation, those roadside oases that started in 1937, offering motorists a friendly stop where they can relax, refresh, and refuel. Stephanie has taken the brand over and is reinventing that brand as she goes along, and some fascinating things that she's doing. As a matter of fact, check her out on LinkedIn. You can see more and more. So please feel free to share this podcast with your friends and connections. The replay will post very soon on several different areas, my YouTube channel, as well as Facebook, also through anchor.fm. The audio of the podcast can be found on Google Podcasts, Spotify, and many other channels. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say this. If you're interested in learning more about marketing and LinkedIn presence, then contact me, and we can set up a free 15-minute discovery call. All you need to do is mention this podcast and how cool Michael Schultz is this week. So that's it for this week. Until next time, this is Chuck Hester reminding you to stay well, stay connected, and always pay it forward.